Hey everyone. Um, I just finished a 10-day Vipassana meditation course, and I figured I'd make this video to talk about my experience and maybe give people an idea of what the course was like, what to expect, and maybe just on the more personal side, what my experience personally was like and what benefits or realizations I had on the 10 days throughout the course. So I'm going to record this video just more or less as a stream of consciousness, a single take. So there may be parts of it where I'm talking for a long period of time, or maybe sections that maybe just aren't interesting or don't pertain to you if you're looking for something specific. So I apologize in advance for that, but I think this is probably the best way to do it without any sort of structure, without any sort of intention behind it. So I'm just gonna kind of jump right into it. I think the first thing that you should know is basically the course goes through a structure where you're practicing a very particular type of meditation, and it's called Vipassana meditation. And over the course of the 10 days, we were kept on a very set, rigorous schedule that involved meditating upwards of 10 hours a day. In fact, on the first day when you arrive at the center, you're given a small room, a very minimal room, a minimalist room, I guess, where it just literally consists of a mattress, on a little bed frame, a thin mattress, a single bed essentially, with a pillow, a chair, and a curtain for your door. You're sharing this room with 3 other people. In some cases, it was 6 or 8. For me, I had a room with 2 others, and you're given this little booklet that talks about your daily timetable, your daily schedule. And the daily schedule was essentially like this. It was, we'd wake up at 4 in the morning, we'd have 30 minutes to get ready, and then from 4:30 to 6:30 it would be individual meditation. So you'd have to practice either in your own room by sitting on the chair, or sitting on the bed by crossing your legs, or in the meditation hall, which was a shared hall for everyone to meditate in, and you had your own assigned spot in the hall. So the hall was always available, and you could use it if you wanted to, but it was optional during certain sessions. So in the morning, from 4:30 to 6:30, those 2 hours were optional in terms of using the hall, but you had to meditate. And so you'd meditate during those 2 hours, and then 6:30 was breakfast. From 6:30 to essentially 7:30 was breakfast, and then 7:30 to 8 o'clock was just rest time to prepare for more meditation that was going to happen later in the morning. At 8 o'clock to 9, we'd have a mandatory group meditation session, usually guided. So the entire course was actually taught by a man by the name of S.N. Goenka, who I guess spread this technique in the modern age through, I guess, setting up these meditation centers and really being a spokesperson for this technique. And then from 9 to 11, again, were additional 2 hours of individual meditation. And then at 11, we'd have lunch again, and then a 1 hour rest. So we were basically taking a break from 11 to 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. or 2:30 p.m. was another individual meditation session 2:30 to 3:30 group session, 3:30 to 5 individual session. 5 p.m. was a tea time and fruits session, I guess. So instead of serving dinner, we'd have access to fruits and tea at 5. And then again at 6, we'd resume to the meditation hall for a 1-hour meditation session, followed by a discourse. So essentially, SN Goenka, the instructor, had pre-recorded these 1 hour and 15-minute, roughly, sessions where he would talk about the teaching at a more theoretical level, the technique at a more theoretical level, and from there, after those recordings were played in the meditation hall, we'd have a quick 30-minute or so meditation session to implement the technique that we were learning during that discourse. And then 9:30 was rest time. So we would go back to bed and wake up again at 4 and do the entire thing all over again. And this is essentially the schedule that I followed for 10 days. I went into this experience with no history of meditating consistently whatsoever. I've tried meditating in the past, a session here, a session there in my bedroom for anywhere between 10-15 minutes at most. My tolerance for sitting in a single position, more or less trying to control my breath or pay attention to something in the present physical reality, was very limited. I never had a solid meditation habit, and so going into this course was essentially like drinking out of a fire hose. I didn't have a choice. I had to adopt a schedule, and I really tried to take it as seriously as I could. And I'm trying to be very selective with my words, because I think I want to make sure that I'm describing my experience in the course without necessarily giving away too much, because I feel like a lot of the results that one might get from going to a retreat like this, they're going to be subjective. Everyone is going to have their own subjective experience in the physical world, observing their body, observing the reality going on in their physical or mental world. And there were several people in the course that I had spoken to at the end that had incredible experiences where they had epiphanies and crazy realizations, I suppose, change in perspectives, and others that things were a little bit more varied, and there were a lot of ups and downs. And so I think the point isn't necessarily to go into this course expecting that you're going to come out of it with some crazy paradigm shift in the way that you're thinking or in your perspective on life. And I don't want to say that I didn't get that or that I did, but I will definitely say that going through the course gave me a lot of things to consider about the way that I had been living my life before, and thinking and really figuring out how to live my life in a way where I can sustain a lot more and contain a lot more inner peace, as opposed to trying to let every small mundane thing that is bound to happen in life, whether mundane or large and potentially troubling, to affect me and disturb my kind of inner peace and inner calm. And as I said, I walked into this experience with no experience, with no past experience of meditating or doing it consistently whatsoever. And I found that the course was very challenging, not just physically, because you're meditating 10 hours a day. It takes its toll on your body physically. You start to experience serious pain in different parts of the body, and you discover parts of the body that, there are physical blockages or irregularities, I guess, and you are able to pick up on those things a lot, and they become very sharp and apparent in some cases during the meditation. And I guess when I another thing to add as well is, it was also obviously naturally very mentally challenging, because you're essentially, at the high level throughout this course, you're essentially, your number one job isn't to think. It isn't to process in a literal way your past, or your thoughts, or your opinions, or whatever attachments you have. Your job is to observe. And it sounds obvious, but when you get there and you're in this very kind of interesting, tranquil environment, you're in a meditation center that's surrounded by forest and a beautiful ecosystem of life and trees and insects and animals, and you can see these things visually as you're walking around the meditation center. It really makes you kind of want to just reflect and think about life a lot, and you kind of realize very quickly when you get there that that's not the goal of you being at the of you taking the course. Your job is really just to be a neutral observer of different parts of your physical and mental reality. And I think that the course was designed in such a way to really train you to get into this state of mind so that you can really practice this technique of vipassana. And so the way that the course was broken up was, the first 3 days you're taught a particular type of meditation called Anapana, which is really about focusing on observing your respiration, observing your breath, and not doing it in a forced way, not trying to force your breath or breathe in a particular rhythm or in a particular strength or flow. You're just observing the natural respiration when you're at rest. And that process of observing your respiration grounds you, I guess, in the present moment, and allows you to get a sense of just how chaotic and wild and inconsistent the mind is. When you are going about your daily life and you have your phone on you, and you have your job, and you're living your life, you don't really stop to think. You can't really stop to think about how invasive and chattery the mind is in terms of its effects on your mental well-being. In those first 3 days, just trying to focus on the breath for each meditation session was a struggle. I had a lot of sessions where, even if for a second or a few seconds or minutes I was able to do that, it was really eye-opening. I felt really grounded in the present moment. But then very quickly, naturally, my mind overcame that process and starts chattering away and thinking about the future, pleasant or unpleasant thoughts, or the past, pleasant or unpleasant thoughts. And that was really hard, to just keep trying. And you're encouraged to do it patiently and persistently throughout the course. And that was quite the challenge, but then, once you get to the remaining sort of, 6 to 7 days, that's where you're really practicing Vipassana, which is, again, it wasn't at all what I thought it was going to be. I thought, again, you hear silent meditation retreat, you think, oh wow, tranquility, peace, you're going to be in nature, it's going to be so peaceful and harmonious, and you're going to be able to really recharge in maybe the way that you think that you need to recharge. almost like you're on a beach sipping a pina colada or enjoying the sound of the waves or the sunset. But it wasn't like that. It was really, the technique was about looking at the sensations in your body and observing them. That's it. And over the course of those 6 to 7 days, we gradually built up our awareness of the different sensations happening throughout the body. The face, the top of the head, the ears, the chest, the shoulder, the arms, the hands, the legs, the feet, the tips of the toes and the fingers. And you gradually are training your mind to pick up on the subtle sensations that are happening throughout the body. And in doing so, you quickly realize that this meat suit, this body that we inhabit, is, there are micro, tiny reactions that are happening in every split second. And our body is reacting to those sensations, whether pleasant or unpleasant, in different ways. And the idea is that you're able to develop this awareness of these different sensations throughout the body. But the next stage, the really important one, is developing equanimity. So the idea that you are equanimous, you don't feel a particular way, you don't react in a particular way to a sensation, regardless of whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. And so as we got towards the end of the course, we were in fact told that we could not change our posture for the full hour. And so naturally, when you're sitting on the ground and you have your legs crossed, or you're sitting in a particular way, even just sitting there for 10 minutes, for a straight 10 minutes, you're tempted to try to shift your hands in a particular way, or move your legs, or stretch out your legs because they're so tight, or adjust your posture in a certain way. But you had to maintain that for the full hour. And I found myself gradually working my way to that final hour, and the first 30 minutes are typically manageable. As I got to the 40th, the 45th, the 50th, etc., all the way to the hour, the pain in different parts of my body started to become unbearable. Incredibly painful sensations, very sharp and gross sensations in my hips, in my lower back, in my knees. And despite all of that, you're supposed to remain equanimous. You're supposed to, okay, I feel a sharp pain here in my lower back. I feel a sharp pain here in my hip joint. Let me just be aware of those sensations and examine them. And the same could be said in the inverse, right? Where, there were some sessions where you're sitting there and you have these wonderful tingling sensations throughout the body, and you're getting a lot of this free flow of sensations throughout the body, and you're, this is pleasant. This is really nice. I'm aware of these sensations. I'm being equanimous, and you crave it. You attach to that positive emotion. And on the other hand, with the painful feelings, the painful sensations, you feel aversion to them. You want to run away from them. And the idea is that in either case, you're supposed to be just neutral, equanimous, not caring, just observing. And the whole kind of philosophy behind this is that as you train your mind to do that, you kind of recognize that pleasant sensations are what generates craving for those pleasant sensations. And the craving of those sensations creates attachment, and attachment leads to misery, because once those pleasant sensations are gone, which inevitably they are gone, they are going away just like everything else in life, you are going to be miserable. And the inverse is also true, where when we're experiencing a painful sensation, an unpleasant sensation, we want to run away from that unpleasant sensation. And that aversion to that unpleasant sensation creates misery because we want to change the reality that we're in and not experience it the way that it is. And the whole philosophy here is that things in life, I guess, just are. They just exist. And everything is impermanent. There's either an object that you crave or are attached to, a person that you crave or are attached to, or perhaps it's your own self and your own ego and different aspects of your ego and self. And ultimately, one or multiple things in that equation are going to disappear. The object may be physically, able to maintain itself through time and space, but you're inevitably going to die. And likewise, for another person, if you're attached to a particular person, it applies both ways. And so this is the very tough thing to. This to me was a very big, eye opener throughout the course, which is just slowly coming to that realization. And I can't say that, I've walked out of this course as this, fully enlightened person that accepts this reality fully and fundamentally. But the way that, we're taught to accept this reality and to understand it is not through reading things online that say, hey, everything's impermanent, don't get attached to anything, or hearing it from somebody else, but by doing it and experiencing it yourself. Because ultimately, every single sensation that we felt in those sessions would arise and then pass away. And that even happened while we were experiencing the session. I remember there were several meditation sessions where I was sitting there and I had this crazy pain in my body. And as I examined the pain, I noticed that it broke down and dissolved a bit, and it broke down into different chunks. And there were some parts of that pain that were actually not really that painful, just kind of interesting sensations. And I was able to localize the pain to a particular part of my hip joint and my glute muscle. And I, even as I observed it for a minute or two, I noticed that it sort of went through sort of like a wave-like pattern. There were moments where it was really sharp and intense, and then it would eventually dissipate and soften a little bit. And I thought that was a very interesting thing. And I think the whole idea behind the course was that as you train your mind to do these things, to not react to pleasant or unpleasant sensations throughout the body, and you become aware of the sensations throughout the body, you're able to handle difficult or pleasant experiences in your life, and you're able to train your mind to not react. And so maybe if I were to have a verbal altercation with somebody, in the past, I might, they might say something to me and I jump and react with anger. This time, maybe with training, with more meditation, I'd be able to recognize the sensation of anger occurring throughout my body and know that it's just a fleeting sensation. It's going to arise and pass, and I can choose to react to it without ego, react to it without attachment or aversion, and better navigate life without as much misery. I went down a bit of a rabbit hole there, explaining, I guess, the basis of the technique and that. And I think maybe just, a kind of closing note is just on my personal experience. I think just the whole process of doing the course for 10 days, very mentally challenging, and again physically challenging, and really just made me realize that a few things. Like, number one, I've recognized that I'm a very agitated person. I have to be doing something at every moment in time, and to actually sit there in one space, to stay in this 10-day meditation retreat and try my best not to quit, took a lot of willpower, but it also took a lot of just observing that really my mind is quite agitated, and that agitation was a sensation, or a series of sensations that I could just choose not to react to. But I also think that it's indicative of an even deeper problem that I've discovered around this agitation, which is that I think I'm quite an angry person. I have some pent up anger, and that anger has driven me to succeed in life in different ways and achieve and accomplish different things, and I've been able to leverage it in that healthy way to do things and to accomplish things. But I also think that it's, just an observation I had, is that it just manifested itself in that agitation and the reaction of my body in not being able to get what it wants, to run away, to avert itself from the present moment of me being in this course and having to do it every day for 10 days. That was hard, it brought that to the surface, and I was able to just really break it down and examine it. And on the flip side, I also really came to understand that I have in a lot of things in my life, just like many of us, I have a strong ego, that is attached to a lot of material things and attached to a lot of perceptive things. I wanna have, I attach myself to this nice apartment that I have. I attach myself to a particular story that I tell myself about, my professional life and my career. I attach myself to, these clothes because I want to present myself in a certain way. I attach myself to this I, this self, who I am, and it leads to, misery in some cases, and, stroking the ego through continuing to seek different things, whether it's buying better clothes, or improving my health by eating better foods, or working out, or a number of ways. And I think it's just really, at least for me, it was really eye-opening just how pervasive this idea of the ego and an attachment and aversion is in the way that we live our lives, and how the simple yet difficult and challenging solution really is to just not react to those things and not get attached to your cravings, and not want to run away from unpleasant situations or feelings or sensations in life. So I would say overall, I'm really glad I did the course. I think this was the exact thing that I needed to reset. I plan on continuing to practice meditation in the coming days, weeks, months, hopefully. And I think if you're curious about it, and it's something you'd want to try, I would suggest that you try not to read too much into it and not do that much research. I mean, granted, I did talk a lot about it to you personally here, but I think that having just an open mind in what you're about to experience, and also having a strong determination within yourself to finish the 10 days, I think that it'll be at least an interesting experience. If anything, you're not going to leave the course with a bad taste in your mouth. If anything, it'll either make you realize that it's not for you, or it'll give you something to think about. So hope this was helpful and interesting, and take it easy.